Hey everybody, this is Perch, and we're back on CBR, and they've got an article for us, just published 23 hours ago. 10 groundbreaking comics that aged poorly. Well, certainly I'm excited to read this article, go through it. We'll see if I agree, and if you agree with 10 groundbreaking comics that aged poorly. I mean, certainly that Lois Lane turns herself black and Punisher turns himself black are on this list. I mean, right? I don't know if those are groundbreaking. I think that Lois Lane comic was trying to be groundbreaking, but anyway. All right, well, we'll see. Let's get into it. I'm a little nervous to see Luke Cage here and Preacher, but let's see where we go. All right, comic books, new ways to adapt. Sure, 10 great movies everyone forgets were based on comics. It's pretty much all of them. Here's an ad from Marvel. Action Comics #1. What? Okay, this aged poorly, apparently. Superman wouldn't exist. Okay, it can be difficult how boring it is. Wow. Okay. I mean, look. Okay, let's see the example. Besides Superman's lack of moral complexity and his adventures being devoid of stakes, his short comics and Action Comics #1 had unengaging layouts and simplistic art. The only reason anyone should read Action Comics #1 today is see how far Superman, superheroes, and comics have come since 1938. Sir, have you read a Bendis Superman book? If we want to talk about... look, I love John Romita Jr. I absolutely love him. If you want to talk about weird art, that Bendis Superman, I don't know if Romita just gave no shits at all about the comic at some point because Bendis was writing it and he knew that it was going to fill up with word bubbles. But we're talking about a genre where in this latest issue of Blade, there are several pages of comics trying to land a contact lens joke. And people are just sitting around the entire comic. But apparently this comic is boring. Okay. I don't know. By the way, if this exact art showed up in a comic book today, a lot of people would be like, look at this trash. But I don't think this is bad. Yes, it's simplistic. It's like graphic design. It's stylistic. I mean, at least the car here isn't a bathtub in front of a door. So anyway, the League. Okay, #9. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was too indulgent for its own good. All right. Now we're shitting on Alan Moore today. That's all right. Characters from the public domain, countless times. What is it? Oh, look, and then it's too indulgent. And here's some characters that should appear in a reboot. Thank you. For better or worse, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen encapsulated Moore's writing pitfalls, devolved in a venue for Moore to preach in, or became a killing floor for whatever he despised. Worse, the kinds of sexual violence and politically incorrect tropes that were typical of Moore's writing were rampant here as well. Well, I mean, you've identified all of Moore's books. Yeah, crazy sexual violence and Moore preaching at things from the page. That's all Moore stuff. But apparently, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is the one we're gonna call out here. Okay. Again, I still maintain V for Vendetta is like cereal box politics. It's politics for dumb people, but that's again a different video. All right, Preacher was an insufferable soapbox. Wow. Okay, I enjoyed Preacher quite a bit. Okay. Preacher comes more like juvenile self-insert power fantasy. Sir, have you read a Garth Ennis comic? Anyway, not a counterculture Jim. Jesse Cluster being Ennis' self-righteous mouthpiece wasn't bad enough. Ground to halt for an edgy diatribe. The fact that Preacher's TV adaptation only followed the comic's broad strokes says a lot. I mean, no, that's how all movies and TV shows work. Okay, this Preacher is aged just fine. I mean, look, it is Garth Ennis being Garth Ennis, but if you read this, if you read his Punisher run, if you read The Boys, you definitely, you see some commonalities there. But if this is an insufferable soapbox, I defy you to read kind of what Marvel and DC are putting out today. All right, Miracle Man. Miracle Man conflated extreme nihilism with deconstruction. I'm starting to think this person doesn't like Alan Moore. All right. Unlike Watchmen, Miracle Man doesn't stand the test of time. Moore made some interesting genre analysis. Miracle Man always answered questions about superheroes' extreme violence, sex, and darkness. Carnage and debauchery stopped shocking and became monotonous. I think Miracle Man has aged just just like how it has. I don't get this at all. Okay, that's weird. I think this has become a let's. If we see another Alan Moore comic on this list, that's going to be weird. I think Miracle Man, if it's aged poorly, it's because parts of it just feel like a dated comic. Not that any of this stuff is, yeah, well, whatever. Dark Knight Returns feels more like a manifesto. Frank Miller, Klaus Johnson. The first one or the second, the third one? Because I think the one where the Joker teams up with Trump definitely felt like a manifesto. But the first one, I don't know. Mouthpiece for Unforgiving Justice. I mean, to me, the weird part about Dark Knight Returns was always that you got like a aging Ronald Reagan running around on a scooter. That was odd. But I don't know. I mean, it was, again, I don't think aged poorly. That's the lens we're looking at. I don't agree. So no. Civil War justified authoritarianism and government overreach. It justified it? In the benefit of hindsight, Civil War is always a one-sided debate that favored Tony Stark's authoritarianism. Not really, though, because they basically came to the conclusion he was wrong. It blew up in his face with Dark Reign like a year and a half later. And they painted the violation of basic right. You didn't read the comic based on this. After Civil War, comics noticeably depicted the SHRA as wrong and spent energy on humiliating Iron Man to erase his blunder. What? So yeah, exactly. I mean, the comic was setting up, whether you like the comic or not. It didn't. It absolutely didn't try and sell authoritarianism. It actually identified the lengths to which people go. You didn't leave that comic feeling like everything was okay for Iron Man and his crew. I mean, Spider-Man at the end goes back to the black costume and is completely disillusioned. Like that's not what this comic was. So you didn't read it. All right, Luke Cage, Hero for Hire, reinforced too many stereotypes. I mean, all right. Luke's characterization stories matured with time. The worse his once groundbreaking one aged. Luke's original gimmicks and habits were corny. Sir, again, I'd like you to see the 70s. Luke even feels embarrassed by his early days whenever they're brought up in contemporary comic. You mean the writers write him to be embarrassed? Like he's a character in a comic book. He doesn't. All right. I mean, granted, the "Where's My Money, Honey" has aged into an absolutely brilliant meme, but okay. I'm now thinking I should have gone to this most toxic superhero relationships thing, but anyway, A Game of You was Gaiman's well-intentioned take on Gaiman's well-intentioned take on LGBTQ identity. I thought this was aging badly. So it was a well-intentioned take or it was bad. Let's see. Decades later, A Game of You's sincere LGBTQ characterizations fell short in many areas. Wanda was misgendered in Life and Death. Only major character who died. Gaiman himself apologized. Okay, this is aging poorly via Twitter. And the aging poorly part, which frustrates me, is that you had a lot of groundbreaking stuff that did happen in the 90s with Vertigo and with a lot of these comics. And then Twitter comes along and says, hey, you didn't go far enough, fast enough from the very beginning for our take. So all those comics are bad or irrelevant, forgetting that, life is a journey and you take several steps to get to sometimes where you want. But, we want to retroactively go back in time and bitch at, settlers to the West for not driving energy efficient cars, despite the fact that in the 1700s there were not cars. So, I mean, that's what this argument feels like. It's fine. I think A Game of You, by the way, not that great a story for what it's worth. The Killing Joke normalized violence against women in mainstream comics. Okay. This has been a take. It's another Alan Moore book. Okay. This person hates Alan Moore. That's we're getting to Sin City in a minute. Hates Alan Moore, hates Frank Miller. That represents more than half of the list. All right, though it's not the first to do so, Killing Joke undeniably popularized a disturbing trend of using violence against women as a plot device to motivate male characters. This inspired imitators are even more tasteless and cruel than The Killing Joke. Moore apologized for this and publicly disowned the comic. Not really. That's not true. That's a gross misrepresentation of what he actually did. So no. This is, look, I think, first of all, I think Killing Joke's also not that great a comic. It's one of those that people, talk about and remember, but it turns out it's not great. In terms of normalizing violence against women, so the normalize, a plot device of the damsel in distress happened way before this. The idea that the evil mustache twirling villain was going to tie up a woman to a railroad tracks and the hero had to come in, run in, and save her. I mean, I understand it was a cartoon, but what did you think was going to happen to the woman tied to the tracks? She was going to get run over by a train and her body pulped into oblivion. So do we need, Garth Ennis to write a story and get, Simon Bisley to draw it, so in all of its gory detail, for you to realize that thing that has been in cartoons since the 50s is actually pretty brutal if you take it to its conclusion. My point here is, if we're complaining about violence against women and the hero having to come in and save them, you're going to have to go a lot further back than The Killing Joke. And if we're blaming this 80s comic for that, your bias against Moore is showing. And by the way, having a character in distress, another character having to save them, in pretty old trope. And we can certainly say, well, it's traditionally been women who are in distress and men have to save them. Yeah, that's true. That's how the culture has been for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But the solution to that is not to have a male in distress and just repeat the same tired cliche. The solution to that is write good stories. And if the story is good and the characters are well-rounded and powerful and thoughtful, doesn't really matter if they're in distress or not. That's the key. Everybody is going to get in distress at some point, regardless of gender. Focus on the characterization. All right, let's get to Sin City, an ode to outdated machismo and misogyny. All right. So again, this writer is dumb. But in 1991, Frank Miller revived hard-boiled pulp fiction. And this is the key right there, hard-boiled pulp fiction. Sin City, whether you like it or not, it did nail what it set out to nail, which was hard-boiled pulp fiction as a genre. That is what it was. So when you say, unfortunately, Sin City also revived and arguably energized the worst hard-boiled tropes. Every Sin City story was shamelessly violent, hyper-masculine, and misogynistic. Even Sin City's biggest fans felt that the comics juvenile felt excessive. Yeah, who? Who are their biggest fans also thought this? That's bullshit. To most modern readers, Sin City feels needlessly aggressive and hateful, more like a parody than a world that stands on its own. Maybe to most modern readers, you mean to your pals on Twitter. But generally speaking, Sin City feels like what it is, a throwback to pulp comics. Was it violent? Yes. So that's what pulp was. Hyper-masculine? Okay, sure. That's just that's a fancy word that means nothing in this case. Misogynistic? Yes, there were, that is that genre. It is, I've got to go save a dame, and that's there you go. If you want to subvert those expectations and make a hard-boiled comic that has none of those elements, you can do that. It will not be a hard-boiled pulp comic at that point. It'll be something else. There's lots of those actually on Webtoon, and people are making those kinds of comics today. Go support them. But anyway, so aging badly. So let's summarize. Okay, best comic book movies for adults ranked. These lists suck. Who did this again? Angelo Dettino, professional ranks, may have only started a few years ago. Shocking. He's writing and thinking about anime comic movies his whole life. He probably what? He probably can't complete a thought, apparently. So Sin City, aged poorly, disagree. Killing Joke, disagree. Not a great story, but disagree. Game of You, again, not an amazing story in the beginning, aged fine. Luke Cage, Hero for Hire, yeah, I mean, like a lot of comics in the 70s, it's aged weird. I could get on board with this, that these stories in hindsight feel a little cringy and have aged weird. Civil War, aged poorly, no, disagree. Dark Knight, absolutely disagree. Miracle Man, again, feels dated. Aged poorly, no. Preacher, hell no. That's just bizarre take. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, again, did it age poorly or was it too indulgent to itself? I mean, whatever. And then this is just stupid. So Superman. All right. All right. Thank you, CBR. Groundbreaking comics that age poorly. Sure. What do you think in the comments below? What are some comics that actually have aged poorly? Do you have any of those in mind? I'd say, some of the events Marvel has done, I think have definitely aged pretty poorly. I would argue that several of the little storylines and things that the Ultimate Comics pulled off aged pretty poorly, but not this stuff. Anyway, let me know in the comments below, and thanks for listening.